Hello Internet, welcome back to Thrumster Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk into the digital void about books, movies, music that I find interesting, that I enjoy, or a combination of the two. And today I'm going to be making a video that I hope I do not come to regret. I may come to regret it because I think the people who watch this channel probably don't listen to the band King 810, and the people who listen to the band King 810 might not like what I have to say in this video. But this is going to be a discussion of the album Rustbelt Numetal, newly released by the band King 810, and particularly one song on the album that I take some issue with. I would like to give some context first, though. The band King 810 are a heavy metal rock band. They are obviously influenced by bands from the late 90s, early 2000s, bands like Korn, for example. They have a very crunching, heavy sound with vocals that are kind of sung, rapped, whispered, screamed, maybe influenced by Jonathan Davis from the band Korn. Now, early on when they came out, they were known for having like a very loyal following locally in their city of Flint in Michigan. You probably know that Flint is very poor, that it's been hugely neglected by the American federal government, and that there has been poisoned drinking water there for decades at this point. And the band themselves, if you believe them, which I have no reason not to, grew up in extremely dangerous, frightening, violent situations. The vocalist David Gunn's been shot twice. They've also been up for charges related to violence. They come from like a real heavy situation, and this is reflected both in the music and in the stage show and in the lyrics. Now, this has probably been to their advantage in terms of the fans who enjoy them, but it has kind of worked against them somewhat in terms of like mainstream music journalists who don't find it necessarily very appealing that a lot of what the vocalist David Gunn writes about is, you don't know where I came from, you don't know what I've experienced, you can't criticize me because you've never seen it, you don't know what it's like to kill a man, you don't know what it's like to get shot, you don't know, you're all just hipsters living up on the hill, like fuck you guys, basically. And I think I quite enjoy that as a stance. I'm like, all right, that's fair. Like that's a good stance also for like somebody to have if they are creating heavy metal music. I get the sense with King 810, I've always felt that it's like they come from extreme conditions, but they're artistic people who want to create something, and they create something out of what they know and what they've lived and what they've experienced. And I think it speaks to people who from in different ways from different places who've grown up feeling scared or feeling in danger, and who maybe have had to like create a certain aggressive persona. So I think that's cool that that kind of thing exists in music. Now, the album that I liked most by them was from 2016. It was an album called Le Petit Mort, or A Conversation with God. And this album kind of had these crunching, heavy, dark songs, but then interwoven with like stuff that sounded almost like film music or acoustic passages. It was like a very kind of coherent cinematic experience. And it had a couple of songs on it that I really enjoyed the perspective. There was one called Give My People Back, where David Gunn imagines himself as like such a terrifying, hardcore, badass guy that he can go into hell and threaten the devil so that the devil gives Flint, Michigan back the people who've died in poverty and violence. Uh, and the song that follows it is like a song where he speaks kind of as the voice of the underprivileged and oppressed people of his city. It's called Vendettas, and this is like really exhilarating, and it's kind of like this. I see it personally as like this wish fulfillment persona from a person who's been deeply hurt by their environment and their background, and he's kind of imagining himself as this like almost godlike figure who can address the injustices and the horrors that he's seen and lived through. Now, that all of this said, there are some things with King 810 that I'm uncomfortable about. And some stuff is like there's controversies that don't bother me very much. Like the people in the band have been arrested and charged for acts of violence and for firearm offences and so forth. They got banned from some shows because they had guns on stage or using like gun props, and they were accused of like promoting gun violence. Their fans are known for being crazy at shows and smashing up venues, and they're not well liked by other people in the music scene. None of that really bothers me that much. That's all like just about like the kind of type of people or the kind of culture that they exist within. I'm not part of that, but I also feel like, you know, that stuff needs to exist for the people who are part of that. And if you've grown up around a lot of gun violence in America, I don't see a problem necessarily on the theatre of the stage having guns and all of that stuff. Like, however, when they did get banned from the show, David Gunn, the vocalist, he released a statement about this, which is like super weird. And this is back in 2016. I only read it recently. As part of the statement, he says, "You cannot, in a vacuum, parrot off ignorant ideas like taking guns away, or college safe zones, or gender pronouns, and call it progress." And then a little bit further on, he says, "When it's perfectly fine to use racial discrimination against somebody, yet it is legally mandated that teachers acknowledge students as non-gender specific animals certain days of the week, a certain outcome is created." So this band has been banned from a festival or deny the stage for some shows because they are going around toting guns on stage. And then his response is about college safe zones, gender pronouns, teachers acknowledging students as non-gender specific animals certain days of the week. And then he says a certain outcome is created. It's like, what are you saying? Like, you're saying that you need guns because of trans people? Is that what you're saying? It's very weird and non sequitous and kind of unpleasant. It makes you wonder, like, okay, what are you talking about? Like, no teachers are actually doing what you're talking about here. You would only believe that if your main source of news was like libs of TikTok and InfoWars. So uh, all of this I've seen in the context of the new album coming out, because some of the lyrics on the album troubled me, and one of them was about like drag queens and hipsters in LA criticizing the rest of the country, and I was like, drag queens? What are you talking about drag queens for? And I looked at this, and it's like, okay, so David Gunn, maybe it's no surprise, you know, he's like a street guy, very masculine. He does MMA. All his songs are about like violence and how rough it was where he grew up. Apparently, he's found a way to blame this on gay people and trans people and drag artists. Now, this is probably a good time to say that in 2021, David Gunn, the vocalist and songwriter from King 810, was spotted at the Capitol uprising in DC when Donald Trump whipped up right wing popular feeling and managed to get a load of QAnon people and conspiracists and neo Nazis and general extreme right wingers to storm government buildings, along with a load of other people who just support the MAGA project. David Gunn was there, photographed, and he didn't deny being there. He said he was there trying to get footage for a new music video, and maybe he was, but I think in the context, you know, you get the sense of maybe what his kind of political universe is. Now, he's clearly not racist and not interested in any kind of open white supremacy, but there are other aspects of this kind of like punch down, right wing, anti progressive rhetoric. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but I've seen it's part of their live show also. Now, why do I bring all of this up? Why am I even talking about it? It's not because I'm trying to get King 810 cancelled. I don't think I could. And even if I could, I wouldn't want to. For me personally, with something like this, it's more a situation where if I like them enough that I had their merch, which I don't, but if I did, I wouldn't wear it because I wouldn't want to be out in public wearing the merch of a band who are making statements that are like anti-progressive, anti-trans, homophobic, and whatever. But I wouldn't be out here like, don't listen to them, or whatever. The reason I bring it all up is because they have this new album, Rustbelt Numetal, and some of it sounds like Rage Against the Machine, and I don't mean a little bit. It sounds a lot like Rage Against the Machine. And Rage Against the Machine were a radical left-wing band with lyrics that were like communist and a cross between communism and anarchism. Tom Morello had Arm the Homeless written on his guitar. Zach De La Rocha was running weapons and munitions for the Zapatistas. They were a far left band and they were open about it, and their whole musical project was a radical far left project. And there is a song on the new album, Rustbelt Numetal, where David Gunn is rapping with exactly Zach De La Rocha's style and rhythm, and the music sounds basically like Bullet in the Head off of the first Rage album. It's like so close to being Rage Against the Machine that it's more or less a tribute to them. And in the lyrics, David Gunn is saying stuff about like the Hopi people like being abused in America. Like he's saying some things that you would think Rage Against the Machine might be in support of, but the actual political thrust of the song is completely pessimistic. Like it's saying we can't do anything to alter our situation. We're out on the streets protesting while capitalists are just looking down at us laughing. And it's predicting the rise of a new Hitler. But there was one line that really bothered me. He says, there's no such thing as a grassroots movement. History is decided, then it happens to us. And I couldn't help but remember that Rage Against the Machine had a lyric which was, what does the billboard say? Come and play, forget about the movement. So you got Zach De La Rocha saying that capitalism, entertainment, advertising is trying to distract you, trying to make you forget about grassroots, trying to forget about changing the world, trying to forget about making things better. And King 810 are out here copying Rage Against the Machine's music and saying there's no such thing as a grassroots movement, which is like a directly destructive, pessimistic position to take. And I think that if you combine a kind of very intense political critique with a message that there is no way of changing anything on the ground, you're basically at best a useful idiot for the political right and for the MAGA project, for example. So all of this is to say that the sound of this album, Rustbelt Numetal, is interesting because it's like recorded live in the studio. It's a lot of energy. They're playing with this nu metal sound that's kind of very out of fashion for a long time, and they're just kind of very unselfconsciously in your face, just borrowing that vibe and just doing it very like aggressively and with a lot of intensity. And I can appreciate that. But when you're using that music to undercut what Rage Against the Machine were originally trying to achieve with their music, I honestly think it's insulting, irresponsible, and not justifiable, not acceptable. That is my little rant about the new album and particularly the song Raindance from King 810. I went from feeling like Le Petit Mort had this kind of amazing, artistic, theatrical, unique style to being like very kind of to feeling like this new album was kind of like sleazy and unlikable. And it's when I listened to this that I actually went and started. I was like, I heard these lines and I was like, wait a minute, what is the deal politically with this band? And what's happened, I think, is that David Gunn has gone from just creating this sort of grandiose, aggressive, frightening persona and writing poetically about being from the American underclass to like trying to apply a sort of more macro political critique, and he doesn't have the knowledge, ability, or insight to do that in any way that is useful, constructive, engaging, or responsible. Have you heard this album? If you have heard it, you probably hate me by now. You're welcome to tell me. Try to be polite. If you don't know the band and did you find this interesting? I don't know. Was there anything about this you want to talk about? If there is, get in the comments, please. I like to hear from the people who watch my videos. Um, if not, thanks for listening. Thanks for getting this far, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully, take care.